Okay, what's going on, Polar Fam, on this Wednesday, June 22nd at 8 p.m. UTC, 3 p.m. Central, 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific, and wherever you might be in the world. Thank you guys for joining us here for our weekly community AMA. Same time, same place here in the Discord. This is our way to reach out to you directly to answer any questions you might have, give you any updates, go over some information, just chat about life or whatever might be on your mind, or if it's a polar or anything else in the crypto spaces. It is our way to engage with you directly. Even though we are in the Discord, this is a good way to get us a little bit closer and be able to have a good conversation depending on what might be going on and answer any questions that you might have. Of course, as always, I am ShibBear, the community leader and now on the Polar team here at Polar. More than happy to answer any questions that you guys do have coming up here. So please do take into account that you can just simply request to speak and I will bring you up here on stage and we will chat over voice. Or you can simply post a question in the AMA Questions Weekly tab, and that then there will give me an opportunity to read it to the public, and then get your question answered for you live. I'll also have this recorded, as always. I am recording it right now. There was an update. It is recording properly, but I do need to make sure that my incoming audio is good. So when I bring somebody up on stage, if I do ask you to say something and then stand by a second, that's just so I'm making sure that it's recording you properly. All right, but until then, as we are navigating through, just feel free to request to speak and I'll get to you here as quick as possible. But I will go over just a few things as far as updates on the version 4.0 that is upcoming. I know a lot of people have had a lot of questions about the that life system that we've talked about so often, where it's almost like a node degradation period, which is okay. I think it's a good thing for the protocol, but I do have a little bit of information on that. So hopefully everyone who wants to be in here is in here, because I'm going to end up repeating this again, I am sure. So the node life system, right? So we've talked about how we're going to implement it, trying to go back and find certain ROI dates. All that stuff still remains the same. I don't have any official information just how that'll be calculated yet. But again, like I mentioned last week and in previous weeks, our goal is to make it so that it's for people who have truly returned on their investment, not just simply a return on tokens. Because if you were to have made a node on, April 27th, for example, shortly before the market crash, you would not be in a return on investment period. You would be in a return on token period, which is not the same thing. We are very clear on that. So we are looking to address those concerns as best that we possibly can. So about the life system in general. Obviously, like I said, it's kind of like a node decay model, right? So from there, you'll have an option to either, reboost it 25%, 50%, 75%, or 100%. Think about it as like a life bar in a game. You can reboost it with these potions little by little. So, there'll be obviously larger potions that'll be, like, for example, they'll have multiple uses to them. So it'll kind of feel like a game system, right? Where you can buy this potion, it'll have multiple uses, and then the normal ones will have like one use per node, right? So you can then increase it by a percentage. You can increase it by 100%, 25%, 50%, 75%, or any combination of what I just mentioned above. You will also have basically, like I just kind of mentioned, it'll be, how do I want to word this? Based off the general creation of the node, right? So as we navigate through this system further, it will be based on the node creation date as far as that ROI is concerned, right? So that's just the easiest way to track it in the long term. Like I just mentioned, we're not trying to, mess with anybody who are way negative, but we do need to find a balance there in order to create a sustainable and easy to incorporate system. We have also thought about the possibility of adding in so that you could say, like, boost your, health points from that node and that life bar, for example, instead of 100, maybe something like 125 if you got a boost to it. Things like that are just things that we have kind of discussed and debated about. These potions will be purchased in stable coins. That is a very important thing that I do want to add in there from our last 2 weeks of discussions over this, where I said, hey, what do you think? Polar, AVAX, stable? And I do agree that I think stable coins are the best way to do it. I'm more than happy to say the risk of that is that people sell Polar to get stable, right? That would make sense. But that being said, it's at least putting the stable back into the protocol because, quite frankly, people were selling Polar for something else, not Polar, right? So that gives us at least a little bit of reinflux into the system there. And that's kind of the biggest updates with that no decay system in and of itself. Again, if you do have any questions, please feel free to request to speak, and I'll go into more details as we move forward. So additionally, I've had a ton of questions about the lottery system. So, hey, why are we using it more often? Why has it not been implemented after the first couple times, which have been relatively successful, right? So basically, we are working on the structure of there. So we do need to make it a little bit, cleaner on how it's incorporated. Excuse me. So it'll be we just have to rework a couple of things on our end, put a new feature into it that'll now allow it to function a little bit better without us having to manually do as much of it there. And then once that problem is resolved, ideally just after a couple days there, we can then do regular sessions with the lottery. Ideally, if once one ends, we can do another, or at a certain days, we can do them. Things like that. Make it consistent, make it trackable, make it something that the community wants to engage with and that they know is coming and know is ending so that it's actually used to its fullest of potential. So that's the update on the lottery system. We are aware that we do need to get that better implemented, and we're happy to do so. And just for the time period, the creator codes are disabled. So if anyone has reached out to us about creator codes, just for the time being, they are currently disabled. As we kind of balance and look into like some of the legal aspects of that system there. So let us work that out. Not the end of the world. If we can re-implement it, we will, but we do need to take some legal accounts as well as practicality accounts into the current system that we're building up to so that we ensure that everything is pretty much how it should be as we navigate forward with that. If that makes sense, I hope so. I think that is the most substantial updates that I got of just this past week here. The life system, the lottery, and the creator codes. So there will be some updates coming out, some information coming out on all of those as we move forward into the system here. Again, if anybody would like to request to speak, I do prefer to talk to people in person, but I will start going through questions in the AMA Questions Weekly tab. I know people tend to start typing in general chat whenever I start up these AMAs. Please feel free to try to throw those questions into that AMA Questions Weekly tab that I did put in the community announcements and as a channel in our Discord, just so I don't miss you. And if I miss what you're saying, then I do apologize. But if it's not in that AMA Questions Weekly, it is what it is. I'll try to get to it, but if I miss it, I do apologize. But until then, I'm going to bring up Z Crypto. Z Crypto, whenever you accept, you will be live. Z Crypto, you should have got like a little notification if you would like to come up and talk. Sometimes there is a little bit of a delay, so there you are. You are live, Z Crypto. How's it going?
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yep, I can hear you just fine. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. Thank you very much.
Hi. I had a question that I got into Polar Nodes like 3 months ago. Like basically when the crash started. So I got in 60 cents, right? So like our Polar rewards have been it was 35 Polars when we got in. So do you guys think that we'll be able to get 35 Polars again, or are we just gonna continue 20 for the time being right now?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So just as I've talked about this pretty much every week, we still have an issue where our rewards pool depletes quicker than Polar goes in. So by definition, that means we still have too many emissions going out than are coming in. So personally, I would not expect that the daily rewards are going to go up as far as the amount of tokens go. There has not been any discussion of decreasing them, but I think we're still in a net negative as far as that distribution wallet is concerned. which is not a good thing. And that means that either
Mm-hmm.
emissions do have to be, at least considered as far as reduction goes. I know people brought up staking that adds emissions, so that's going to be a problem as
Mm-hmm.
well. Or we just need an influx of demand to meet that aspect right now.
Okay, and I've been trying to use the creator code and it was disabled. So do you think the creator codes are gonna come back anytime soon, or
Yes, like I
are
just
they
mentioned,
gonna?
we did just disable them. They may or may not come back depending on some of the things that we're looking into on our end. But we will give you some more information on that as soon as we have that information to give you.
Well, that was pretty much what I was trying to ask.
All right. Hey, appreciate the question, man.
All right.
And I already see people in the general chat talking about the lottery. Listen to what I just said, though. We do have to fix something. We'll get it done in a couple days, and it'll be running very smoothly. It has been successful when it does run. So we do know, and we are resolving the issues with the lottery, and we will continue to progress that accordingly. All right. Let's see. Again, just trying to go through the general chat because people started typing in there, even though I said, please try to converge it to the AMA Questions Weekly channel. Because we have a ton of channels if you guys didn't notice. So, all right. So this long questions, which are hard for me to navigate through because I have to read them and then try to answer them. So this is me filibustering and reading at the same time. And this one is from Martin FLP. I do understand that the price action is currently looking solid, but that being said, I did just kind of address how the benefit of that live system would be to Polar. So if you, for example, were selling, or I'll take you out of it. If I were, for example, claiming and selling Polar every day, and I don't know, turning it into whatever, doesn't matter, USDC.E, and sending it to my bank or staking it or whatever the case might be. And then if I were to be doing that in that theoretical example, that money is going out of Polar in the claims and the sales, and it's not coming back in. So even though that there is some stability right now, this is saying, hey, with that, some of that Polar that people are claiming and selling, it would be great if you could put some back in if you want to. If you don't want to, we're not going to force you, obviously. It's just the degradation periods of time there that'll allow it to kind of get washed out over time. But the idea is just, hey, we do need some extra input. We really do. And that's not us trying to be greedy by any means. Quite on the contrary, to be honest, because there's a large treasury and we're doing everything we possibly can to promote actual growth. So that is kind of how I'll answer that one. Is I do think that this live system is not only a good thing, but it will be necessary. And for those who are trying to also DM me, please, again, try to type your questions in the AMA Questions Weekly so that I can effectively navigate everything. If I start going all through Discord, sometimes I crash out. So please try to converge them into the AMA Questions Weekly and not the general chat and not the DMs, even though I will try to get to them. So I do apologize if I miss your question if it's in another channel, but I will try to work around it just so that I don't miss you at all there. Okay, any questions of getting audited by Certic? As an investor, I'd really appreciate it. Okay, so this is from Lee Johns, and we've had this question since January, right? So an audit is a good thing. It is, I guess it bolsters the security aspect of things. I think it's a positive, right? So we have talked about doing audits in the past. Oftentimes these companies want $30,000 plus dollars to do these audits. So we can get an audit from like some side place that isn't quite as expensive. And then I'm going to hear a bunch of people say, well, why not Certic or the other one that's big, whatever. And then from there, it is what it is. And that being said, that's still possible. However, when we go to upgrade to our contract version 4.0, that audit that we would have had on the 3.0 becomes null and void. If you are to do an update, you can pay to do an updated review, and they just ensure that updated portion is fine. But as you transition to a new contract, you will have to get an entire new audit on that contract. So that could be something I could talk to you, Nora, about the version 4.0 once we implement it and we were like, okay, hey, this is what we're going to roll with for a good while here. That might be a good time to look back into that there. I think that'll be a great thing. That being said, our contracts have been, pretty decent, obviously. Since January, we haven't had any major issues at all. And an audit is kind of like a security check. So they're a good thing, and we should look into that for the 4.0 anyway. But if I have any more information on that, I will let you guys know. Again, just trying to navigate through a bunch of different things. Okay, well, I don't think Paul's in this chat, so if one of the mods are in here, can you please try to guide Mr. Paulino in the sense that the Olympus notes are not currently available? If you are in the AMA, hopefully you answered that. Oh, Technomage, you tried to call me during my AMA. Why are you doing that? But, all right. Keith, I'm going to bring you up here. Hey, how's it going, man?
Good morning. Thank you. Yeah, good. Good. Yourself?
I'm doing very, very well here. Another bright, sunny day. It hasn't rained in a long time in West Texas.
It's very cold here in Wellington, New Zealand, that's for sure. It's about 4 degrees. That's degrees Celsius as well. Question anyway there, Shib. So in relation to the original community vote to reduce the rewards paid out by the nodes, the intention behind that was going to be sort of a temporary measure until the markets rebounded. With the upcoming V4, will that intention still be the intention, I suppose? So are there nodes looking like to go back to their full-fledged reward structure in the future?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I think if all of the other variables were the same that they were back in like February, March, and April, then we can definitely consider that, right? That would be the intention. I don't think we expected when that little crash hit that it was going to be as drawn out and as extreme as it has been. I don't think anybody really expected that this quick, even though we've kind of been in a bearish market since November. It didn't really hit DeFi until, late April to early May. So personally speaking, I do not foresee that demand getting that high again in the future, but it very well could. It could even go higher than it was before, obviously, just depending on different variables. So I think if it were to make sense as far as a protocol is concerned, it would definitely be something that we can consider, but we're not going to, for example, if we were to say, hey, yeah, you can have your 35 Polar per day again, but we have to print 100,000 Polar tokens per day to make that a reality, I don't think that's a good thing for the protocol, right? So we have to kind of navigate those variables as we move forward. If possible, Enor would love to get that reassessment back done, but from where I stand here, it's, the realist mindset. I don't really foresee that in the near future. If that answers your question.
Awesome. Yeah, no, that's a great answer, and I pretty much agree with that. Once you sort of get used to what they're paying, you sort of just re-strategize, realign your plan for, where you want to end up with the amount of Polar per day that you want to earn. So, I enjoy it. There'll be others that disagree with that, that perception. But no, I think it's great. Thanks for that answer. Appreciate it. Have a good rest of your evening.
I appreciate you, and you have a great day over there in New Zealand. Sweet. And I learned that if I get these AMAs recorded and put up very quickly, I do appeal to the Australian and New Zealand audience a little bit better. So I'll continue to do that for you guys as long as I don't have any significant technological issues here on my end. Okay, so from Louisiana, I want to say Louisiana, but it's like Louisiana. So from Louisiana, any plans to add Olympus Lucky Box regularly in the future? So ideally, I would like to have those as mostly a part of the lottery. And as we've seen with the last lotteries that I've worked out, it is a good way to bring in a good influx of tokens, but it also allows us to control how many of these Olympus are released. I was pretty open about it. We accidentally released a bunch of Olympus. I guess that was last week at this point. I don't really remember exactly when. So we slowing down because we technically only have 26 left, and how many that we were ever going to intend on bringing out there from the 500 total. So a lottery might be a good way to continue to get those out on a reasonable and steady way there. Ozman, I will bring you up here next. Whenever you would like to speak, you can simply accept and you will be live.
Hey, how are you guys?
I'm doing very well. How are you?
Good. I had a quick question. So, is there any kind of buybacks going on or plans to do it or anything like that?
Yeah,
Like
great
protocol stuff?
Yeah, great question there. We did do buybacks in the past, so I'll kind of go into the current risk of doing a buyback in this kind of market. So, especially right now we're seeing a good positive, right? So that's a great thing. But as the price action trends negative, let's say we were to buy back, $5,000 worth or whatever, and the price moves. Those are often then used as exit liquidity for the people who are currently and actively selling every day. So we're basically just taking our treasury and we're giving it to the people who are selling every single day, no matter what. So once we get a true change in that vision and that mindset of different people who have invested within our protocol, then we can implement strategic buybacks to help, facilitate the natural demand that is already going on and to help bolster that a little bit. I think that's the best way to incorporate buybacks in general instead of just doing them randomly, because people will just drain our treasury, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I'm in Tor as well, and I think they do it randomly, so that nobody can front run it, like bots and stuff like that. But they do it pretty much constantly.
Yeah, and people also set up alerts on like DEX tools and DEX screeners, so they'll see when there's a big buy, and then they'll immediately sell once they see that big buy. So people do that. That's not even a bot. That's just them doing it manually. Yeah. Pretty easy. So we got to take those into consideration.
Maybe it doesn't have to be big buys, maybe a little bit here and there or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think once we get that version 4.0 out, I've already talked with Enor quite a bit about developing some form of a strategic burn strategy, and we can use a live system. I think we could also utilize a direct buyback and burn system where it immediately buys back, goes into a burn wallet, and then just let it be there to remove some from the circulating supply. In my opinion, that might be the best way to navigate those current waters that we're dealing with here.
Yeah. Another thing I had was at some point in earlier, you guys were saying that, we're trying to get away from node panzenomics and into the real investments, real kind of functionality rate. Any developments over there on that front?
Yeah, so all that is still in progress, and they are bigger things to develop. And as many people have brought up, since we already have well over 50,000 nodes created, or excuse me, we have 49,661, almost 50,000 nodes created. That a revenue share model that quickly without a significant revenue flow would be very, very low daily yield. So we're trying to create a little bit of a branch aspect to that. That's what this version 4.0 is opening up, is to introduce different things that will give a little bit more sustainability to the protocol itself, but also give us some more time to then ultimately get to that better business model system in the future.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Hey, appreciate you, man. Sweet. Another good question there. You guys are actually behaving in the general chat this week. Usually as soon as I start these AMAs, it's like an alert where people come in and try to cause trouble. So all you are being very good in the general chat, so thank you. I appreciate that. But I do monitor it, so for anyone who's out there looking to cause mayhem, I am watching both ends of it there. I do see someone else typing the AMA questions weekly. Just trying to make sure I didn't miss anything. That was I went over things fairly quickly. Okay, Mr. Sap, sorry, I totally mispronounced your name there. But I would recommend you check out our recent announcements. We did lift the hard caps at this point. I would foresee that being a temporary thing, but as of right now, we did lift the hard caps so that we can continue that influx of Polar to the rewards the rewards wallet, or we'd end up not having enough tokens to pay out, which is not a good thing. So as of right now, we do not have a node cap in play, but that might be something that we consider back into the future. Enor talked about it quite a bit last week, where we developed that system and put it out there in the space when demand was crazy high, as well as some of the things that we were working on seemed to be a little bit closer in reach. So things have changed a bit on that end. We adjust, we overcome, and then we move forward. From Hoodie Does, any chance of current penny rewards will be cut again? I guess there's always a chance that anything could happen, but there is no current discussions on that. Like I mentioned earlier, emissions, in my opinion, are still too high. And that's just my opinion. It doesn't mean I have any ability to change anything, but obviously emissions are too high because the rewards pool still gets drained. So something is still not adding up on that balancing beam that is going out there. So I would keep that into consideration, but I would not think that we're going to do like a quick, change. Ultimately, I think if we were to, I'd like to implement the Dano system back into play, allow people to vote, and kind of give a more reasonable projection at that period of time. Have I thought about Horde liquidity pool management? Oh, Hoodie, have I ever? I would highly recommend you go and talk and listen to my last, I think, 3 AMAs. I've gone into them so exhaustively. Not that I have any issue with Horde. I think they're a fantastic company. Good for them for getting in on that 2 to 3 months ago. But I could go into the speech again. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. If I get another Horde question, I will. But until then, I would either just search in the general chat for the words Horde and look what I've talked about on there, or just listen back to my most recent AMA. It's not super long. I do go very in depth on what Horde is great at and why it would not work super well with where we currently are unless we use a significant portion of the treasury to boost that system. They also have the benefit of having that high demand where they use that LP management where they were doing sales. Imagine if you try to do that, but all you're doing is buying back indefinitely because the demand is still too low. That's a problem, and that would definitely cause issues for the protocol and likely limit us as we move forward. But no hate, shout out to Horde. They're fantastic at what they do. Yeah. A couple others went under this week, though. So very sad week in DeFi again. 2 other relatively decent protocols decided to close up shop. So RIP to those. I hope nobody got too torn up by that, but it seems like that was kind of expected by some of the communities, except for the one. The one was not super expected. Do I mind saying who? Yeah, they made it public, so I guess it's Aleph, A-L-E-P-H, if I'm mispronouncing that, so be it, and then LVT. Both a couple of days ago have elected to shut down the doors of their protocol. That Aleph one, if I'm mispronouncing it, I do apologize, actually surprised me of all the ones out there because they were doing relatively well. Just like 3 days before they decided to close down, they were touting about their sustainability factors on their Twitter. Interesting that they got to that point. Hopefully they can try to make it as right as possible to their investors and their community. I think LVT was... I think that was expected. I don't know. That's what I heard. Hey, shout out to you, Degen. Shout out to Mod Society because you guys are killing it over there. So still just reading through some of these questions here. Thor Bob, they do. Those lottery proceeds do go into the rewards pool. So that's why we have to fix that one issue that I did mention at the beginning of this AMA here and get it out consistently. Enor just gave me an update right before the AMA. It should only be a couple days now. They'll get it resolved, and then it could just be fluent and properly done without the some of the issues that we were experiencing with it, as far as like the manual part of it that was having to be incorporated on our end. This will allow it to flow pretty easy and more reasonable for the community, but also allow it to be orchestrated a lot better. Shonia, thank you for working to keep going during the downtime instead of hanging up the towel. Keep up the good work. Hey, shout out to you guys. I've mentioned this since January. The community is literally everything to Polar. We have not forgotten any of that. You guys are the life, the soul of this project, and we know that. I mean, it's very, very clear. We would not be where we are today to use this treasury to build these things that we're building if it weren't for you guys investing into us and believing in the protocol. And I know that price has been very, very poor for the last month to month and a half. But shout out to you guys for sticking around. Honestly, we did have some FUD for a little bit there, but it's kind of dried up. And that is not an invitation for you guys to start up again. So please don't start up. But it does seem like people have gained that understanding that, hey, the markets suck. The projects who keep working and the teams who keep working are the ones that are going to make it through. And that's what we're doing here at Polar, working literally every single day. Weekends, weekdays, morning, nights, it doesn't matter. We're out here working to get this protocol moving and where it needs to go in the long term. Blaz, I do also agree. The price has been steady the last few days, which is positive to say the least. I would say that as well. So I appreciate you guys. It's either been steady or even trending up at times, trending down a little bit, trending up. We've been doing relatively okay for the stabilization part of this markets. I don't want to, I'll knock on wood a little bit, but we've at least not continued to go down from that crazy point last weekend, right? It's somewhat came back and stabilized, for better or worse. Still very well could, though, so be aware. I don't think we're out of the water by any means. I think there could be a couple more bad days, weeks, whatever. But eventually, the light at the end of the tunnel will come, and we'll be in another bull market. Nobody will remember this even happened. And a lot of the newer protocols that come up at that point will make the same exact mistakes that are made in every single bull market, and it'll lead to the same issues that come in the bear market. But this is our time to learn. So as we get to the next bull market, we can restructure things, restructure how we navigate our finances and how we move different things around. And then we can be better prepared for that ultimate eventual secondary bear market that'll always come. Shout out to Enor for having us switch our AVAX and our treasury to a stable coin when it was like $60 AVAX, or else our treasury would have gotten eaten alive too. So something to keep in mind that liquidity pairs, treasuries, them being in stables, especially during a bull market, is very, very important. And this bear market, not a huge deal. If you're in them, you might as well ride it back up. But at that point, what stable coins are we potentially moving to in the near future? USDC.E is a good one on the Avalanche network, and then DAI is another very good one. Those are both great stable coins, and definitely something to, those are the two that I like to use. I use USDC primarily, but I think for Polar, it'll probably be in DAI or USDC.E, I'd assume, which is just the Avalanche USDC. From Hoodie Does, where can we view the investments and overall treasury? So we have all of our contract addresses in the FAQ channel here on our Discord. Everything is in there for you to look at, and you can kind of just see the different movements that we have, things that they're invested in, and things like that there. So it is all very transparent. If you do need some guides, I will just kind of tag that channel at least so that you can not have to navigate too far to try to find it. We do have a lot of channels, so that might help there. Sweet, sweet, sweet. Anybody else have any questions that they like to request to speak about, where they can come up here and talk in person, or they can just simply post in that AMA Questions Weekly channel that I've mentioned. Make sure that I'm not missing anything. Again, there are a few different channels that people post in, so make sure no one is typing or anything like that. Our AMAs have been a little bit shorter than they used to be. I kind of miss the old 2-hour ones. Had me out here working, losing my voice mid mid AMA because they were 2 hours long, but I do understand that this is a different time in crypto. It is a little challenging to get motivated for a lot of people. I mean, I assume that there's been a lot of people that are in this AMA right now that during the downswing, and we've seen them pop up in the chats, like it changes their demeanor, it changes their personality because their life changed. And, I don't necessarily like the saying is do not invest what you are not willing to lose entirely. Right. So, but that then people will say, well, that sounds like gambling. Well, it kind of is. You could put money into the stock market and it could be a gamble, right? There's different levels of risk. DeFi, small market cap crypto is at the, quite frankly, there's like a gray wall that separates gambling and investment with where we are in crypto, right? So if you get into a token trying to 10 times, you're gambling. That's what you're doing. So keep that kind of stuff in mind. That I'm not saying that this is gambling, but risk management is very, very important. Finance is very flaky at best. I can even reference one way back that it was like called Lucky Coffee Company, I think. It was some company out of China. I put some money in there. Shortly after, like the week after, they had some huge corruption scandal, went down to zero, and was gone. Just like that. And that was a real company, like a real actual company that had a product. So there is risk in everything. You could technically put money into, some are too big to fail, as we know, like the Microsofts, things like that. They're at the point where they're too big to fail. They'll get bailed out by the government. But anything else besides those is a relatively large financial risk. But it's our job to help include as much as we can to increase the chances of success in anything that we do. And that's with the protocol itself, as well as life in general. All right. So, hey, I just got a question like, hey, what is all going into that version 4.0? So I will even just go back. I would highly recommend you check out our announcements. We do have a couple different roadmaps in there. Enor has talked relatively substantially about all of this there. There's a lot that I would have to talk about. Maybe I might just tag you in this, but the overviews of it, of that 4.0, is kind of like a gamification of the DApp. It'll be a live system of the nodes, which I went into earlier, is like kind of like a node decay system, but I've had people say, well, that's just a maintenance fee in a different way. Well, it's a way to get an influx of money back into the protocol. If you forget to work on this live system for 1 month, you're not losing all your rewards like you are with another protocol or two. So it's not quite like a maintenance fee, but it is a way to encourage those who have obtained legitimate return on investment to put money back into the protocol if they choose to stick with us, because we are sticking with them and still working. So that is just kind of like a thing for us to help. It also allows the version 4.0 will optimize our contracts a little bit, ideally reduce some of the gas fees, and also increase the speeds of the transactions, which ultimately reduces gas fees as well. It'll allow us to have a contract that is a little bit more expandable in general. So we're removing some things that we don't use anymore. And every time I use this word, I get a comment on it. So some things that we don't use anymore, like level ups. That doesn't mean that there are level ups, but there were at one point. So removing some of those things that are just not practical right now to the protocol, I think that is important to increase the efficiency of the contract itself. And then it also paves the path for a relatively substantial growth aspect of what we're doing here. So we have Polar Ventures working, which is like a VC fund. We still have some aspects of Polar Guardian already implemented or to be implemented once these protocols go live, many of which got delayed due to the market conditions. Good call on them, to be perfectly honest. I think that'll be pretty cool. One thing that I guess I haven't really talked about yet, Enor is trying to get a way for us to not have to do a major migration for version 4.0. If we can do that, that'll be fantastic. I'm not sure if we can do that just yet, but there are potential ways to do it, I guess, depending on how big of a migration it is. So we will see what we can do on our end to make it so that nothing changes for you guys. You just sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. But there might have to be some actual migration done, whether it be like the one that was in February where we did it all for you, or the one that was in April where we asked people to do it as well. If it is that, either or option, we will bring it to a community vote and we will provide real numbers as far as what it'll cost the protocol compared to what it'll cost each node individually, stuff like that, and allow the community to decide, because we're fine with either one, to be honest. It's just, what do you guys want to see from us? I would love to get that Dano aspect more formalized once again, where there are votes coming up about different things, especially during these shady times in the crypto markets. It is very important for us as a team to make quick and focused decisions and pretty much allow us to survive, right? We're in a survival mode. It is what it is at that point. So that Dano aspect still is a thing, but we do have to consider the best idea for the protocol itself. And in a way for me to justify saying that is, way back in February, I put out a vote of reward structures, and one of the votes that I literally got into a fight with some of the now former team members about was to get that fourth option in, where it was way, way lower rewards. We're talking back in February at this point, because those kind of rewards are very hard to maintain. And that, I believe, received the least amount of votes at the time, right? I'm not saying that would have saved us from anything or everything, but, in the sense that might have been the better idea at the time. We allowed the community to guide it. The demand allowed us to do that, which is perfectly fine. It got us up until May before we hit some decent crash, which is great. Gave us another few months, but now we have to reassess from there. So we just have to work hard in these moments of stress, and then we'll let the community kind of engage a little bit with a different mindset than some of us might have into the future. All right. Filibustering a lot. Usually I have a couple more people coming up to speak, so I'm not talking for 42 minutes straight, but that is okay. I can do it, I think. Kind of go over one of these questions here. All right, so from Blez, crypto is a gamble. So at the nodes, you think there will ever be potential for an option where you, on your existing nodes, you can purchase a gamble, and it'll either increase your polar per day by an extra 10 or decrease it by 5. So that would be a fun little system. But that being said, that might be difficult to contract into there, right? So I'm not sure. I'm not a Solidity developer, but I feel like that might be a little bit difficult to contract in. I feel like the better way would just be like to say with the lottery, say, hey, you put in 10 polar or 100 polar or 1,000 polar, and it puts it all into a pool, and you can, you choose 5 winners or 1 winner or 2 winners or whatever the case might be. I think that might be a better way that can encourage some of that same mentality, but also not have a ton of different work on the contractual side. And then I have Arnev DM2. What's going on?
Hello, good evening for me. I have a question about the decay system. How will it work for the people that bought in at the highest?
I'm sorry, maybe I didn't. Did you say you do not think it's fair that for people that bought on the highest, or sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Something like that.
Okay, so your question, I guess formulated in another way, because that's a statement, would be, how do we ensure the fairness of the life system? Is that kind of got it? Okay, cool. So I talked about that pretty in depth last week as well. So what we're going to do for that initial one is try to find out a date where these nodes were created to which they've actually obtained a return on their investment in USD conversion, not just tokens. If we can find a way to do that, then we have a little line in the sand that say, hey, everything made before this date has actually a return on their investment. Everything made after this date might have had a return on tokens, but potentially not a return on their actual investment. And that'll allow us to ideally create a more fair system from that beginning aspect. Now, as it formulates into the future, it becomes a little bit more difficult because it would be based off the node creation date. So if you were to create a node today and the price action were to go down over time instead of up over time, then it would, well, actually, let's do both. If it were to go down over time, then your return on investment period will be longer, obviously, right? But if it were to go up, then your return on investment period will be shorter. So
Yeah.
then you would have to either expand the life cycle to make it longer or decrease the life cycle to make it shorter if you were to try to navigate it directly off of those two variables. So we've elected to take it off that node creation date variable, which is the fairest but also the most contractually sound mechanism to do it. If it looks like it's significantly negative, we can always alter it and kind of go from there. But we do intend on bringing it live with the most fairness in mind to the community, because we do understand that a lot of people are very much so underwater.
Yeah, I bought in at 2,500 per Everest, so it is a lot lower. I bought in at $2.5, I think.
Yeah. So at 2.5, that was right about when, that was like a pretty steady point for a period of time, and the market crashed and it just dove from there. So that is something that obviously we do keep in mind and we do factor in as we are building this next aspect of it. Trust me, we are not intending on leaving people behind like that. The intention is to take the people who have actually made their money back plus some, to incentivize them to put something back into the protocol if they still want to.
Yeah, thanks. I'm just compounding all the way right now, so.
Cool, and that means that those later node creation dates will be beneficial to you in that life system as well, and that's kind of like a dollar cost average system for the nodes in general. So hopefully it works out as cleanly as I'm hoping it will. We're putting a ton of work to make it as such, and we are more than happy to be adjusting as we go forward in case it doesn't work out quite as intended.
Yeah, I know. I'm happy I'm part of the project. So.
Hey, I appreciate you, man.
Thanks for answering my question.
Anytime at all. Sweet, good question there. Coca-Cola Polar Bear. Whenever you respond to that, you will be live. How are you doing?
Hello, sir. Can you hear me?
I can hear you just fine.
All right. So I'm. You may have already touched on this, but my kind of question, resolved around that. As far as node burn and whatnot. So if, in terms of pulling money back via tokens or pulling back and getting your USDC, would the same aspect go? Would if you were just compounding, would that work the same way as, oh no, he did get his ROI back, he just compounded it instead? I'm one of those ones. I threw 15,000 in roughly, just at about $3. That's fine. I understand what I'm getting into. I love Polar still. But, I put in 15K and, I've pulled out about 4,000 total in terms of ROI. So, I'm one of those that are sitting there waiting, but that's fine. I'm just curious if I were compounding, would that go towards my earnings, and then burning that node?
Yeah, so I definitely understand that question. And I think that is going to be a part of it that not everyone is going to want to agree with as well. But that being said, compounding does also impact the total emissions rate. So at this point, it is beyond it just being a little bit more difficult to assess, hey, they compounded instead of claimed and sold, for example. It will be incorporated into that same formula, whether you claimed or compounded. But still, ideally, back to the point that the long-term factors of it is as you compounded, then your future node has a later ROI period than your current one. So you're kind of, like I mentioned just before, dollar cost averaging through the nodes themselves, if that makes sense. And I know it's not totally fair, because if somebody got in January and they didn't take a penny out yet, all they did was compound. But that being said, they'd have 150 Everest by now, right? So
right.
That would we have to factor into that aspect as well.
Okay, and then my last part to that is, will the rewards, you may have already answered that, but once market conditions improve, will those rewards go back up to base levels where we were considering, or are they going to kind of stay here or potentially decrease still?
Yeah, so I did talk about that a little bit earlier, but I won't go into it again. I think if all other... No, you're good, man. No worries. A lot of other people joined a little bit later too. So if all the same variables that we were dealing with back in February and March were the same as they are today, then I think the potential for the reward rate to go up could happen. But personally speaking, I do believe that emissions are still too high. That doesn't mean I have control. I'm not going to say, we need to lower the rewards rates again. But in my personal opinion, emissions are still too high, as shown by our rewards pool getting depleted quicker than the demand goes in. It's a net negative. So I wouldn't expect the rewards to go up or bank on it. But if it were to go up in the future, then that way it would at least be a positive change. But I think the most accurate thing is going to be that it'll stay the same for as long as possible. And if we can bring it up, great. If we absolutely have to do something to bring it lower, then we will. But ideally, that will be done via community vote and not just a quick change again.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you for your time today. I appreciate that.
Hey, I appreciate you. Great questions there.
Yep. Have a good day.
Thanks. Sweet, sweet. Let me jump back in the Discord, make sure I haven't yet missed anything. Just in case. Looks like I've answered all the AMA questions weekly. If anybody still has a question, I see Fish typing in there, so I'll filibuster just for a little bit. But obviously, feel free to post your questions in. Definitely request to speak if you wish to speak. I think I've answered a lot of questions here already. Fish, is there an ultimate low price for Polar, like a threshold? Okay, so that's a good question that a lot of people don't necessarily fully understand, which is okay. So when you have a liquidity pair in a liquidity pool like we have here with Polar and that every other token has, technically speaking, that token will never go to zero, like 0.00 indefinite, unless both tokens were to hit 0.00 indefinite. So with us being paired with AVAX, the only way the token could be literally worthless is if AVAX went to total zero, and Polar then at the same time goes to total zero. Or technically, either or could happen from there, but not as much with Polar because we are in liquidity pair. But if AVAX were to go away completely, then we'd have no liquidity pair. And that would also be that wouldn't actually put it down to zero, oddly enough. That would just make it so you can't trade it for whatever I don't know what that means. A great example would be like with Luna. So when Luna's floor went out from under it and they started printing massive amounts of tokens, it just went to 0.00001, for example. So ultimately, I'm not saying that is the trajectory of Polar or the trajectory of any token, but ultimately speaking and realistically speaking, that's how these liquidity pairs work. So the any token could go down to whatever that supply variable compared to the price action variable and be a very small decimal point. It's very possible. But I'm not going to say like, hey, the floor is 0.03 because it could go lower, right? It could, just realistically speaking. And the ceiling is whatever the demand factor would be of the ceiling. There's really no ceiling hard set as well. Is there a price, though, that the Polar team would step in and boost it? So we don't have like an official backing treasury like some other protocols have. I think one or two have that I'm aware of that are bigger. They also, I don't like them, so I'm going to use their name. So there's this protocol out there called Jade. I've name dropped them a few times in AMAs. They ran off of a rebase token promising 1 million plus % APY. They used that to build a crazy high treasury. And then they said, okay, we're not a rebase token anymore. As our token dropped, yeah, I agree. So their token was dropping 10% a day, 8 days straight after it already went down significantly. Anybody who sat there and listened to the dang founder who just said, hold and you will be rewarded, you didn't get rewarded, you got burned. So, but from the unethical build up there, they had something like, 20 million, 100 million. I forget how much money they had in their treasury. They took a huge piece of that and put it into a backing treasury so that they can control a floor price of their token. That's how you would control a floor price. We do not intend on using the treasury like that right now, but if there were to be a major influx of the treasury, that would be something that I've always been very interested in. The economics of it are pretty good. And it creates almost like the Horde system before Horde became a thing. But Horde did it much more ethically, to be honest. So that kind of backing treasury is possible and is doable, but right now we like to focus our treasury on building these additional aspects of Polar so that we can bring real utility, and the token will rebound as it does. I'm not saying we're going to abandon the token at any means, but we can't abandon the protocol to save the token, because then we're just kicking the can and eventually you'll run out of room to kick. Hopefully that answered your question, man. Anytime. That's a great question. So thank you for that. There is another question to type in, so I'm going to filibuster, give you a few seconds there. Check my other chats. Shout out to you, Hezbollish and Hezbollah, but not Hezbollah. If anybody knows what I'm talking about, not shout out to them, but shout out to Hezbollah. All right, real utility like 5. Hey man, those miners are not doing super well right now. Like, Bitcoin miners are losing money. You got to watch out on those things with market conditions too. They go pretty south pretty quick. So, let's see here. There are still people typing around, so I will filibuster just a little bit. And making sure I'm not missing any questions. It looks like all the AMA questions weekly have answered. Again, if you guys have any last second questions, I'm on a timeline. Just simply request to speak and I'll bring you up here live as I filibuster for the next few seconds to give you the opportunity to do so. But I think this was actually a pretty productive, pretty informative AMA. A lot of times the weekly AMAs, I just open it up to the community and you guys kind of take it over from there. But fortunately this week, I did have some things to give you updates on. So that's super cool. Great on our end. I look forward to this version 4.0 coming out. I'm very surprised nobody said, hey, when 4.0 coming? Because I don't really know just yet, but it is coming very soon. It is ahead of schedule. Josh is our lead dev on that. He's working very hard on that. So that is in progress, and we'll give you some updates as soon as possible on that end. But until then, it looks like I have answered just about every question in the books through the general chat, through the AMA questions weekly. If I did miss your question somewhere, I do sincerely apologize. Just ping me in it again and I will answer it directly. But it looks like we might be coming to a close on our weekly community Polar AMA here on Wednesdays at 8 p.m. UTC, 4 p.m. EST, 3 p.m. CST, 1 p.m. PST, sometime in the morning over in New Zealand, and sometime over in the other time zones as well. Same time, same place as where we will be here next week and indefinitely. So shout out to all you guys. Shout out to the team for working very hard. Shout out to all the mods and community team that have been out here doing everything that they can to keep us floating. Shout out to the community, as always, because you guys are truly the lifeblood of this project, and we will never forget that or forget you. You guys are our number one factor here at Polar. So appreciate you guys. Great to talk to you. Great to answer your questions for this week. I will have this AMA uploaded here in the very, very near future. So as I come to a close, same time, same place next week. The one last quick question. I've already cut people out. Sorry, Cosmic. Q3. Yeah, I assume so, man. Like we're pretty ahead of schedule, so it should be coming within like a near period of time. We're not talking like months and months down the road. We're almost there. So, but with that being said, I will bring this week of, I don't know what the week is, but the day of June 22nd, 2022, Polar Community AMA to a close. Appreciate you guys. Talk to you again. Same time, same place next week. Peace out.